I'm like, Alex Sezer, graduated in 2016, and this is my major, and here's my cell number. Like, so I was handing out business cards to all of the donors whenever I was in college.
Welcome to another episode of More Than 94, where former athletes redefine success. I'm your host, Nene, and today we have Alex Sezer. Alex is a Christ follower, a husband, and a father. He was a team captain for the Texas A&M Aggies football team. He's a former, the CEO of Twin City Properties. He now owns Sezer Enterprises. Alex is an author, speaker, and a coach. Welcome, Alex Sezer, to the More Than 94 podcast.
Thank you, Nene. I appreciate the intro. Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. So the purpose of the podcast, Alex, is to basically highlight people that play any collegiate sport and went on to do something professional other than their sport. Because I feel like we hear so much about actual professional players more than we hear about people that are doing exceptionally well as a regular person. And so I feel like more people are obviously going to relate to you than a professional athlete because most people don't go professional. And so that's kind of the gist of the podcast. And to start it off, we're going to go into like, how did you get into sports and how has it so far impacted your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So how I got into it is kind of like I was probably like most people born with a football in my hands. Some of my earliest pictures were in a Dallas Cowboys uniform kind of thing. So just grew up around sports. My family was a very athletic family. My uncle played college football. My dad was a football player as well. But seeing it early in my family, that just kind of got me into the game. And then we grew up, just playing outside in the yard, old school games, throw them up, bust them up kind of thing. Just made me a tough guy as a young person. And I just kind of grew to like it and then love it as I played it more. But yeah, family got me involved in it pretty early on.
Okay, so how did we get to become an Aggie?
Yeah, so I originally from Louisiana, lived there for 10 years and moved to Texas. It's like they touch, so it's not much of a move. All it did was change my driver's license basically. But Texas A&M was not on my radar growing up. I was a big LSU fan, which now is obviously a no-no in Aggie land.
Yeah.
But big LSU fan, and then Texas A&M was actually the first school to offer me for football. I had pretty much my option to run track anywhere in the country, but due to injuries, didn't have a lot of football offers. Texas A&M had a traveling or what they call a satellite camp at my school. It was the last year they could do that. Ran a 40-yard dash. Coach Sumlin looked up and was like, "What just happened?" He came over to me, asked me to do it again, did the same thing. And then long story short, they offered me a full ride football scholarship without ever seeing me actually play the game of football, like in a Friday night setting.
Yeah.
And then they offered me a position I never played before. So that's what got me to Texas A&M is they were the first big school to take a chance on me when it came to football without having a bunch of film and footage due to injury. So that's how I got to A&M. They offered me.
And you say that I know a coach personally. He had told me when he goes recruits kids, he'll see them play football, but he'll go see them play in the off season. He'll go see them play basketball, or he'll go see them play track. And he said because that's a good determinant if they're good athletes.
I mean, if you can, have success in other sports, depending on what sport it is, like obviously it's going to translate to football as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that separated me from other people in high school was, or at least other football players, was they knew they weren't going to have to worry about me getting arrested. They knew I was going to be a good teammate, and they knew I was going to make really good grades in school. So if I would turn out to be like a nothing when it came to actually stepping on the field, like they knew they were going to have a solid teammate, a solid person in the locker room, and then being able to step on the field as a true freshman was just icing on the cake. So
no, that's good. So going to Texas A&M, how did you pursue your current, like how did you make that bridge from college to your current career? I know you were at Twin Cities first with property, like real estate essentially, and then kind of explain that.
Yeah, so my career journey was interesting after Texas A&M. So my education was what we call ID, so industrial distribution, which is in the engineering college. So I was doing football and then engineering school at the same time. Post graduation, Aggie-owned company. I went to work for a company by the name of Opportune, which was an oil and gas consulting firm or energy consulting firm now. I was doing that, and a year into my tenure there, I actually got a call from a guy who was a former athlete at Texas A&M basketball player. I met him just fishing in his backyard. I walked up to introduce myself, say thank you. That one thank you turned into a conversation that turned into an eventual like friendship, mentorship, and he called me a year later after I graduated, and then that turned into a business partnership. So I moved back a year later, became the president of his real estate company, Twin City Properties Management. Then I started my own acquisitions company, which is Sezer Enterprises. Built that company up, bought about 340 units, and then sold it back to him. So, and then now after that, I went independent, public speaking, athletic settings, business settings, school settings, and then was basically kind of recruited to work for the company I'm working for now to do some of the stuff I was doing solely by myself, independent, to do that now internally. So AD, Affiliated Distributors, which is the largest buying group in North America. It's like 1,500 different companies now. I help lead the sales training for all of the different member companies. So that's kind of how the path it took me. Just had a really genuine interest in real estate, even while in college, and found a guy who was 30 years ahead of me and had done it before, and listened to him, and looked up and had built a company a
So
couple
how
years
did you
later.
find him? Because being an athlete, playing football, you don't get a lot of free time. You ain't got time to
Yeah,
think about that kind of stuff. So how did you find this? How do you go network with? Because as
right.
basketball we play, we traveled during the week. There was no being a regular student to try to make connections with people.
Yeah. So the luxury I had at Texas A&M was that they strategically placed us in rooms with people that were giving a bunch of money to the university. So that's how I met a lot of the people I met. And that was the thing. Like some of my teammates, like, bro, I'm not sitting with them. So we huddle up at one table, and I'm like, nah. Like they paid a bunch of money to come watch us lift weights and eat breakfast. Like they care enough to help me
Yeah.
whenever I graduate. So I would just go up to those people, shake hands. I literally had business cards whenever I was in college.
Oh.
I have much resume behind it, but I'm like Alex Sezer, graduated in 2016, and this is my major, and here's my cell number. So I was handing out business cards to all of the donors whenever I was in college. How I met him in particular, so weird story, but a bunch of pieces to put together. There was our team chaplain. His daughter attended a birthday party. He didn't call our team chaplain, called that friend and said, hey, you know where you had that birthday party? I have a couple of guys that like to fish on the football team. You think it would be okay if I brought them out there? So that guy then asked my partner, Doug, if he would allow, a couple guys to come out and fish. So while I was fishing, he actually walked out of his, double doors in the back. And that's where I met him, as I saw him walk out of his house. And I just, went up to say thank you.
So what
So kind of
did?
a weird place to
Yeah, but
meet.
where would you? I wouldn't even have thought of the idea of having business cards. Like we had the thing called the Boyer Mile. They would watch us come run a mile, and afterwards we would walk with them, talk with them. It was people in the community. I would just be talking like small, and we all hated it because we had to run them out. Like, I wouldn't even ever have thought of just like, oh, I probably should could give like,
Yeah. So, you've heard the quote, you got to take advantage of the opportunity of a lifetime and the lifetime of the opportunity. So for me, I knew for someone to come pay money, and it wasn't small money. Texas
right,
A&M, like those donors,
yeah,
it's a lot of money. But for someone
millions,
to pay money to like watch us lift weights, they paid money to watch us practice.
yeah.
Not a game, practice. We're talking about practice here. So for them to be that concerned, I'm like, man, they have to like I'm not gonna be this hot when I graduate, and I'm
Right.
not, because it doesn't matter who you are, Alex Sezer or Miles Garrett or Johnny Manziel. Like once you graduate, the 5-star in high school probably has more with the donors of Texas A&M. They probably care more about those people because it's a what have you done for me lately kind of sport.
Right.
So I knew I had 4 years to be hot, 4 years for all of them to care about me at the level they did, and I took advantage of it. So the business card thing was a way for me to separate myself, because the same way you're like, how'd you think of that? They're like, oh, this dude's different.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got business cards in college. So that was the one thing, is I was always looking for ways to separate myself. The night that I met my business partner and told him thank you, there were 5 guys there that night. One said thank you. So it's like, what are you going to do to separate yourself from the crowd? The same thing that we use on the field, on the diamond, on the court to
Yeah.
separate ourselves. Are you doing the same thing in life? The other thing I did, so
Go ahead.
the
I'm
other
sorry.
thing I did, and if you are a college athlete, like take my playbook right here.
Yeah. Listen.
All of the buildings have names on them, right? Those are people. Like, so you go to this dining hall and this center, like those are people that donate a
Mm-hmm.
butt ton of money. So what I did is I tracked down all of those people and I was writing letters. Hey, I did like an internship, worked for a day with one of our donors. And he was like, hey, do you know who got my scholarship? And like when he said that, I was confused. I'm like, hold on, your scholarship? What do you mean? He was like, well, we donate money for a scholarship, but we never know like who it goes to. And I was like,
Oh.
oh, so you would like to know where that money went. So I'm like, I took him and everybody else. I just started writing letters like, hey, I know you donated money so that I could be here, so that I
Yeah.
could have a scholarship to play football at Texas A&M. Thank you. And I did that every year. And then like the next year, I would send an email just like, hey, going to my sophomore year, just wanted to give you an update. Had a 4.0 this semester. Really excited about the upcoming season. And I did that for 4 years. Whenever I graduated, my senior year, people were pulling me out of meetings, offering me jobs. Like I
That's,
had guys like running hedge funds, like, hey, everybody in our company is like 55 years older. We do not have a fit for you, but we're impressed and we would like to just kind of bring you on and make a role. Like, but that comes from separating yourself from the
that's,
competition.
all those buildings, somebody had to donate money for that building to be built or
Yeah.
whatever.
I think it's
Yeah.
a mixture of nature and nurture because like some of the stuff I was just wired that way to think differently.
Uh-huh.
But like my parents weren't like, hey, if you see that building, like they instilled in me the gratitude and saying thank you. But like the actual operations of it, I don't know. I was just like, I guess when you want to make it out and you want to figure out a way, like
And
you
you
kick
figure
it.
like and that's a good thing, like, cause you knew that like I'm not probably gonna go professional, so I need to know
Yeah,
what I'm gonna do or what I'm gonna be doing when I get out of here and so that's and I went and worked actually. I didn't work for she was essentially a donor, but I went and worked for the head coach's wife after college, and she
right.
donated a lot of money to the actual team because she owned a temporary service, and she just knew. Obviously, she was there at the game. She knew what kind of we introduced ourselves, grade, our degree, and so that kind of and she was looking for a person, and I was the only one that necessarily had like a legit degree because a lot of the girls had like interdisciplinary. It was like three of us that had like legit degrees, and so that's how I got my job is by just talking with her, she being around. I thought they updated those people on who got the scholarship. I didn't know they didn't like let them know who got what. I
No, they're
I kind of
just
assumed
giving
that.
money into a black hole. Like they don't know exactly like
Oh,
where it's going, but like they don't know like, oh, this $60,000 this year is going towards Alex Sezer. Like they don't. It doesn't get that granular because it doesn't matter. It's a pot of
yes,
money,
right.
but for them it matters a lot. Like anybody who's going to donate money to anything to know like where your money's going, how it's been spent. Like that's a big deal.
So, based off your college career, I mean, obviously your college career now, your part of your career after college, can you kind of explain any kind of hardship challenges? Obviously, everything isn't smooth going through from college and
Right.
then going to real world. Can you explain like how did sports kind of prepare you for those challenges that came after,
Yeah.
even during collegiate? If you have any challenges during like any injuries, and then after college, how did sports in general prepare you for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being able to overcome adversity because business success is not about how brilliant you are, how smart you are. Most of the time, it's like the people that can just outlast whatever it has to be accomplished. Yes, most of business success is about how long you can last and not give up or keep doing it. I think sports is a great example of teaching you what it means to overcome adversity, continue to endure despite hardship. I actually tore my hamstring coming out of my freshman year in college, and you see like the difference between, oh, you started as a true freshman to now you're kind of limping with a bum hamstring and how people treat you. So it definitely helps you appreciate the ups and downs in life. So I think sports taught me a bunch about being able to overcome adversity and keep going.
How did sports prepare you for any challenges that you went through in college and then in your current career? How has that background helped you with navigating those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sports is a great teacher when it comes to being able to overcome adversity, face adversity, and keep moving forward. One of the things that I experienced in college, outside of just the small injuries and the everyday grind of being a college athlete, was I tore my hamstring coming out of my freshman years. Touched the field as a true freshman, started. You couldn't tell me I wasn't going first round after my freshman year. And then going into my sophomore year, I have an opportunity to be like a starter full time because I started a couple games my freshman year, and then some of the guys that upperclassmen came back. But going to my sophomore year, I'm like, okay, I can get on the field and stay on the field for the next 2 years. I'm out of here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I tore my hamstring and tore it pretty bad. And every single time I tried to go back to practice, somebody would run a go route, and I try to hit full speed, and I pull up every single time. But you really start to see in those moments how people, I guess you would say, value or treat you when you're not able to be on the field versus when you're healthy and capable. So it really started to help mold my mind when it comes to how people will measure you and how success is defined in the real world, so to speak. So like evaluations and the marketplace and people liking your stuff or not liking your stuff, you just get thick skin after being an athlete. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna put this out. If the world doesn't like it, like I'm okay with that. And being able to take that initiative and just keep going until you figure it out. If you've never dealt with any of that type of adversity, the first time you get punched in the mouth, like it might hurt a little bit. It might put you out of the game. Like real estate, my first purchase, like everything that could go wrong went wrong. But having that background of overcoming adversity is just like, hey, this is not going to take me out. And then you look up and you've done it, hundreds of times, but you don't get to that without doing it the first time.
But and I also think it's kind of hard for, say, if you've never before, like say before you went to college, you never had adversity, like for that kid. Because I was that kid. Like I never had been hurt. I never had any type of injury until I got to college. Then I tore my ACL, and I'm like, what is this? So it's like, how do you even go from, you know, without having like like some everybody have mental toughness. Everybody's background is different, but like explaining to a kid that's never had adversity as far as an injury going into college.
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
you even speak to that?
Yeah, the biggest thing with that, I would say, and I'm not on this podcast to preach to anybody, but if you tie your identity into sports, like I don't care who you are, at some point, if you are a current athlete that is playing a sport, that will not be the duration. Like that sport will not last the duration of your life, especially if it's something like football, basketball, baseball. Like you're not going to play into your 70s. So you're not going to do it professionally that long. So understanding that, like you have to find something outside of ball to attach your identity to that is unchanging. And for me, that was Christ. When life hit me and when adversity struck and when people tried to measure my value and worth based on my performance, like I knew who I was in Christ and that wasn't going to change. Circumstances will change, but you need to have a sure foundation. And ball is not a sure foundation because the game, like sometimes you don't play the game, sometimes the game will play you. And like that is just life. So you have to find something else to have as a sure, steady foundation that you can fall back on, whether that's faith for you, that's what it is for me, or family. Like you need something that's constant and unchanging. And there's not a lot in life that is.
Yeah, I think that's harder said than done for some people because they have that one mindset and thinking that
they have to experience it. Some people learn from other people's lessons. Some people have to take that lesson for themselves. So.
Yeah, that teammate was telling like a lot of kids don't. Obviously, you're 18, 19 years old. Unless you've had those conversations at home, a lot of those kids don't understand that you are no value to them if you cannot bounce a ball, catch a ball, blah, blah, blah. So, and I think a lot of kids go into there thinking that they're supposed to care more about you. That's their job. Their job is to win games, and that's it. And I think that's so much of I don't understand, and I get it's so hard for kids nowadays to understand that they're not there to necessarily be your friend. The coaches aren't there to be your friend. They're there to win games, and their job depends on it. Their livelihood depends on if you gonna perform. So they're gonna be worried about the next person. But I feel like it's such a hard thing to grasp when you're that young, and they think that they should just, just love and care like they're your own kids. I'm just like, that's not how this works because that's their livelihood and that's their job to win games.
It is a job. They, obviously there's some brotherhood and sisterhood in collegiate athletics. But at the end of the day, these coaches will leave. They will move. They will get fired. Like that is the nature of the business. And most of that is predicated on your performance. Oh, yes. So they're going to care a lot about your performance.
Yes.
Not a lot about you.
Not a lot about you.
So you have to be able to objectively look at the film and go, you're critiquing my performance, not me as a person.
No, yeah.
And when it comes down to, I think sometimes when they do care a lot about your performance, you can interpret that as they care a lot about me because they're talking about you, they're talking to you. Yeah. But the moment your performance slumps or you can't perform at all, i.e. injury, they stop talking to you, and you're like, you don't care about me. It's like it never really was about you. It was about your performance, and you're currently not performing. And that's a hard truth to like
Yeah.
grasp because it's like what like it is a job. I can't say what year of college, and I can't say what coach,
Yeah.
but I had a coach, so nobody. I had multiple coaches. Y'all can't pinpoint who it was, but I had a coach at some point in my life. He kind of blew up on us. We didn't have great practice, and kind of screaming at the top of his lungs, like, "How would y'all feel if your job and your family eating was depending on a whole bunch of 18-year-olds doing their job?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Let me just tell y'all something right now." And it was graphic, so let me see how I could clean this up. Basically, what he said was, "It's either you or me, and it's not gonna be me. It's gonna be you that's gonna take the fall." So it's kind of like I'm not gonna take the fall for y'all. Like, and he just made it clear. Like,
Yeah.
either you're gonna perform or you're gonna sit on the bench
Right.
because my daughters are depending on this to eat. And that's the like I would rather a coach tell me that than you come sit in my living room and kiss butt,
Right.
and then I get to college and you're like treating me like a nobody. Like
Yeah.
just be straight up. We
Mm-hmm.
expect you to come in here perform. As long as you do, we will treat you very well. The moment your performance starts to slump, we're gonna course correct, and if you don't correct, we're gonna find another place for you to be. We're gonna try to get rid of you. Just tell me.
This and
I can
that's
respect.
yeah, I can respect that too. Just tell me off front so I know what I'm dealing with. But you also have to realize that that's how life works when you go get a job. If you're not
Yes.
performing, they gonna replace you. Like that's just it.
Yeah.
You
My
get
my, my
you
Yeah,
getting
my
replaced.
grandfather used to tell me, he said, "Son, they will post your job before they post your obituary." And it took me a while to learn this
Yeah.
because as someone who has been like a top performer in most aspects of life, like you start to like kind of think you're important,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, if I ain't at this company, I don't even know how they're gonna be in business anymore. Life goes on. Like you're
Like
not that. None of us are that sweet. Like it might be harder to replace you, but at the end of the day,
you will be replaced.
they may not be. They might not perform at the level you perform. They might have to use two people to replace. You might be so sweet they need two people to replace you. But I can tell you right now, they're going to
To
replace you.
replace you.
So if you want to put your worth and you want to put your value and you want to put your security in some title that you have right now, somebody's gonna have that title tomorrow.
Yes.
Like my wife loves me, but if something happened to me tomorrow, like she might replace me. So I know this job will.
She want to go get replaced. It's life.
Life goes on.
Life has to go on. And I just think that's just a hard concept for people, especially when kids, they're not thinking about that in college. I think
As
that's
a
just
kid, I
hard.
mean, even my baby right now, everything is, it's give me, it's about me, it's about me. Like
Yeah.
that's how you grew up your whole life, and
Yeah.
then next thing you know, like somebody goes, "No, the
No,
world
it's
doesn't revolve around you." You're like, "Oh my gosh, like what happened?" So
and now that I know, like I was oblivious. Everybody at their house would have these conversations. So I would have this conversation. My stepdad would tell me, like, bro, you not gonna be the best when you get to college. So just know right now, everybody from their high school is that girl. But we had those conversations, and so I'm thinking in my head, like, every family's having, they have to be having these conversations. They're not. And so I went in knowing like I'm probably not gonna be the fastest, quickest, the best shooter, blah blah blah. But everybody, like you said, you got to do something that you're gonna stand out to keep you on the field or whatever. And so and I've carried that over into my professional life. But that's important because if I didn't have that conversation, I probably would have been one of those kids. I wouldn't have been the exception. I would have probably been one of those kids that thought like I was gonna go to the like I thought I was that girl and would have had that mindset, and then the amount that adversity shows up, I'm like, what in the world? Or
yep.
I got the ACL injury, never bounce back from that, or depressed somewhere, like woe is me. So it's just I think that's the hardest thing, looking from like transitioning from college into the real world. Like we have our identity so wrapped up into that particular sport. It's like, what do we do next? And I think it was such a big deal when I was going to school, but it's still like an area where like people are just stuck, and it's not a good feeling to feel that because I've experienced not myself. I was out happy when basketball ended, but like I've seen so many of my peers
That's
struggle with.
because it's not what they do, it's who they are. And when you get those two things
Yeah,
mixed up, like you're setting yourself up for frustration.
you are.
So.
And so that's like when I went to school, like it was like academics is first, basketball is second. Like go get your education. I declared a major as a freshman. They like, well, who nobody does that. Oh well, I do. I know I ain't going to the WNBA. Like
Yeah.
so, I'm gonna have life figured out a little bit while I'm going through it. But what is like some advice that you would give a guy in your situation that they think they might be, they don't know what they're going to do, they're not going professional, but they don't know what to do. It's coming to an end, and they're trying to figure out what they need to be doing, maybe their last year to
Yeah.
transition to the real world.
Yeah. So my top advice would be to take advantage of the resources that are available to you for the last year that they're going to be available. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people that are maybe donors, former students at your university that are probably willing to talk to you, willing to hear you out, listen to you, maybe even give you a job at some point. But you don't know unless you start to have those conversations. So if you don't know what you want to do, right now is the best time to start to discover what that might be. Whether that's, hey, Mr. Mrs. Business Owner, I want to know what it's like to live a day in your life, and would it be okay if I came to your office and shadowed you for a day and start to figure out what you like obviously you're not going to be the CEO the day you walk in, so you probably need to look at what the employees are doing. What does their day-to-day look like? What do you want to be involved in? What lights you up? Now's a great time to start to really ask yourself questions, because it's not about having all of the answers, it's about asking the right questions. So what would I be excited about? Like, one of our mutual friends, like his biggest deal was God give me something else to be excited about, to be
Yeah,
passionate about post football. So like what else is there out there that can light you up? And for most of us growing up in the environments that a lot of athletes come from, like we didn't really weren't exposed to what else in the world could light us up. Like that
yeah,
was a perfect time to get exposure. So
yeah. I think that's good advice because I'm 35 and I'm just figuring out some of the stuff that lights me up at
yeah,
35. So
exactly.
you can figure that out quick, and that's gonna be good. So people that are like listening or will listen to this podcast, what are like some kind of inspirational message or words of encouragement for listeners, again, who's navigating career transition or facing challenges in their own lives?
Yeah, absolutely. My success model for transition in life that has made it easier for me is I'll go back to the foundation identity thing. Whether it was football, real estate, anything I found my hands doing, I was able to transition when God called me to another phase in life, because that wasn't who I was. That was a way of me fulfilling who God called me to be. So I'm okay with, like, even right now, all the stuff he used to introduce me. If any of those things change, like, I'm still okay. I'm still Alex, and I can find another method to then display the glory of God in a different arena. So that will be my biggest thing. And as you transition, don't look at it as you're losing a piece of yourself. You're still a whole person,
Yeah,
and you can be a whole person in a different environment, in a different industry with different people. So if you understand that, the transition won't be as hard. It's not gonna make it all sunshine and peaches and cream, but at the end of the day, like, you still are who you are, despite not operating at the same level in your respective sport. Or maybe you're 35 now and you're transitioning in your career. Like, it's okay if people don't now call you the real estate guru or the CEO or president of this company. Like, that's okay to transition out of that, and that be put a former in front of that title, former president, like, that's okay, because I'm
yeah,
still all Alex. Like, it doesn't matter. So I'm still a child of God, no matter where I find myself. So whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. That will be
yeah.
my
I get.
advice.
Yeah, I think that's just not. Yeah, not following in like people. That's their normal question. Hey, what do you do? And so
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I do all this, or
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I've never been a title person, so just not again finding your identity in a title because that title
Yeah.
can go away at any
Any time.
moment and at any type. Yeah, so I always be like, what do you do? I do. I heard somebody say, I think it was like they said, what do you do? Whatever it takes. That's what I do. so, so
Yep.
instead of being caught up into like a title, like oh, I'm gonna this or I'm an accountant, like you were saying, I think it's hard not to because people just act like, what do you do? And so I was like,
Yeah, it's the first question.
it's the first question.
Yeah.
So
So it's like,
that's
I would rather, like, what if we change that? Like, what do you believe in? What do you care about? Like,
yeah,
those are questions, like, to actually get into the heart of a person. Like, Not that they crunch numbers all day as an accountant. Like that doesn't tell me much about you.
Right.
Um,
But I think that's
I
too
don't
deep
know.
though. In the first interaction, they're like, "What
Yeah.
do you care about?"
Whoa.
Well, I hadn't thought about that. So,
Yeah, life philosophies over here.
what do you, what makes you
Yeah.
tick? Like, but yeah, I just think that's good for those kids that are coming out because I didn't realize like doing this podcast. I knew there was like a, that I didn't know how many people actually struggle with that transition. I knew some people did, but it's a lot in
And it
2024. Like
and
it's
it's a
wild.
long struggle too. Like people
Yes.
don't realize like how long like you've just listen to people talk and you'll recognize like, oh, you still living in high school, huh? Like just because like that was the good old days for them. It's
Prime.
like, bro, like
Yeah.
life doesn't have to be over when you drop that ball.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know. After the lights turn off, it's just it's like people losing a part of themselves. I played in the Texas Bowl, not too far away from College Station in Houston. And when I walked off that field, like my only prayer was like, God, like, because I was having some back issues and like legs going on. That's the only game I've ever played. I wanted to win the game, but I knew if I walked off the field, I won. And when
Yeah.
I walked off that field, we lost to Kansas State, and I was like, but I won though. Like I can walk. I made it out of this game because there were points to where I was scared if I would make it out. Like I got out. I can go work. Like I'm healthy, relatively, like speaking. I felt like I won, and I was at work on Monday. I was ready to go. So
Yeah, I was probably working on that next week. It was almost like a burden off my back because I had been injured twice, and I'm just like, you know what, this ain't it. I want to be able to walk after I leave this
that
game.
was my thing. I want to
Yeah,
walk and walk away.
to
So
be able to bend at the knees when I'm 50. Like it's about that time, and it was almost like Jamar's like, how do you feel? I was like, listen, I'm so glad. And I love basketball, but I love like competing. I will never. I'm a
yeah,
competitor at heart, but it was
yeah,
just like not at the expense of sacrificing my body every day. Like I've sacrificed my body enough to where it's like I'm okay with it being over. But I've always been like, so again, it goes back to childhood. Like I was always taught like basketball is just a game. It's just a game. And at the point that you feel that you're not having fun, and at that point I was not having fun. I was just out there because I needed to just be out there to fulfill my obligation.
yeah,
I was not having fun anymore. So it was like it was easy for me to just walk away because I've been taught that my whole life.
yeah,
At any point that you're not having fun, you need to just let it go.
yeah.
And
And you know
that's
how many people are experiencing that right now professionally in their careers, and it's just like this ain't fun, but they feel trapped. It's just
trapped.
like this is soulless work. I sit in traffic for an hour and a half. I get to the office. I try to smile and have social with my coworkers, but on the inside I'm dying. But I don't feel like there's any way out. There's a way out. Like you can do something different. It may
Yeah.
not happen in one night, but you can start to look for something else that you can do and not stay stuck there feeling like you're dying on the inside. Like there is a way out.
And there's a way out. I was in a conversation like we've bought into an American dream. Like you got to have this amount of house, this car, and so I feel like a lot of us are stuck because we're having to uphold a lifestyle, essentially, and pay those bills. But I'm just like, all that stuff don't even matter. Like, it, it does not matter. If you want to, I tell somebody, if $300,000 a year is enough for your family to live like y'all want to live, not necessarily what society think y'all
Yeah,
should
who
live,
cares?
then you're successful. You are successful. If you can go home every day and say, I love what I do, whatever, and I make this X amount of money, and I can be at home, my family, whatever your values are, and that's enough for you, then that's enough for you. Don't fall into the trap of what you see on social media, thinking you got to.
I'd rather you spend 50. I'd rather you make $50,000 a year and spend 40 than make a million and spend a million. Like save your money, live below your means. Like you don't have to. It reminds me of like this. It's like a piece of artwork, and the legs of the table are people, and there's like people around the table, and they're playing like a poker game or something like that. And the moral of that artwork is like when the people stand up, the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, who gave you these thoughts? Who gave you these ideas to where you just have to do it this way and become a servant to the lifestyle that people have told you have to live? And maybe I don't have to do it this way. Maybe there is another way. So I'm just a maybe guy. Like maybe have you
Maybe there's
thought about
another
it?
way. You don't have to live up to these standards that society has placed. Like there's other ways to live and to live well. It may look different from somebody else, but that because it's different don't mean it's
Yeah,
wrong. So
yeah,
I just think not all of us, there's some people that just, they got to go to work because make ends meet. I get it. But I think some of us are in that trap of, because we're trying to uphold a certain lifestyle or depict a certain thing to the rest of the world. All right, closing it up, what are some key takeaways that you hope some of the listeners take away from listening to this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think key takeaways would be, if you are an athlete that's transitioning or a former athlete, like, don't let that experience go to waste. There's a lot of things you learned as an athlete that now translate to the real world. And if you can take that same work ethic, discipline, desire, determination, and transition that to business, like, you're going to kill the game.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing, and probably the most important, is like, you are more than what you do. Like, life is more than ball. You are more than the game. And the moment that stops, you can still be a whole person and move forward and do something else.
Yep. The hint's more than 94. You are more than what you put on that court. All right. So thanks, Alex, for coming on to More Than 94. What are some ways people can get in touch with you, like your social media handles or anything like that?
Strategically, I hide. But you can't find me on LinkedIn professionally.
Okay.
I don't have an Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Twitter or any other stuff that is out there. Find me on LinkedIn and my website, alexsezer.com. It'll have my email and everything there. But I strategically try to stay hidden.
Okay. It's a time waster for sure. Well, again, thanks for coming.
I don't need everybody to know what I'm doing.
Take it off the pictures.